sisi keleli Afrika, malupaganisu pondolwayo, litwa imitandazo yetu ngosi sikelela.
Hi, welcome back. CSRM's weekly podcast. And whether you're driving to work and listening to this, you've downloaded it somehow and you're listening, or you're watching the video, we welcome you. We're here again with Bradley Barnes. If you missed our last segment, Bradley was sharing with us about his experience as a world-class football player, playing soccer here in America, football the rest of the world, and how he has now two sons that are playing. He and his wife have two sons that are now, and Bradley claims that they'll be better than he was.
Yeah.
Well, they've got a ways to go yet. We'll see how that goes. But then also to know that Bradley is the director of CSRM South Africa. So he oversees, did you say 9 provinces?
9 provinces.
That they're working with people in each of those provinces to help local churches do their sports, rec, and fitness outreach. And so Bradley is tasked with training, resourcing, equipping, mentoring those people so that local churches can do this and do it well. And last time, Bradley, we were talking about how to help parents, how to help coaches, and you started to talk about that we have this great opportunity in the local church to give this kind of opportunity.
Yeah.
But you really were talking about pouring into the coaches.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that, because oftentimes, at least in America, local churches, they call it sports ministry when it's really just some sort of Christian education that they roll a ball out with, as opposed to it being a league, a sports league that integrates the faith into it. And there's a difference there, isn't there? Because the first one doesn't help anybody get better at their sport.
No.
They're helping them get better at their faith, and we applaud that.
For sure.
But we're saying, help these people get better at their sport, but also, through that experience, deepen their faith. How do they do that? What do you see? How are you doing it in South Africa?
Well, in South Africa, we have what we call it soccer life coaching.
Soccer life coaching.
Yeah, we work in a way with the terminology of a soccer coach. So we
You've done away with it.
yeah.
No longer coach.
You're a life coach. You're a soccer life coach.
Soccer life coach. I hope you catch the differentiation of that. Go ahead.
Soccer life coach. That is what we're working on in South Africa, where we go in actually to the local church. We're looking at people that has a passion for soccer, a passion for coaching life, a passion to want to get to an understanding of how the local church get integrated with the so-called high level of competition leagues. And how we go about doing that, Craig, is that we educate these coaches firstly that you are dealing with people. You're dealing with a child or children from different backgrounds. And children come in with different challenges.
Let me just stop you there for a second. I want you to continue.
Okay.
But there's something you said that I think is very, very profound, and that we need to help those who are doing the local church sports ministry understand it. You said we have to help the coach remember that this is a child.
Absolutely.
This is not a mini adult.
No.
This is not an adult that is smaller in stature. This is a child.
And it's not also the next superstar. It's not the next biggest paid footballer. It's a child.
So go ahead with that.
And so our understanding, before we give a coach the opportunity to coach, we make sure that he understands that he's dealing with a child that don't know yet. We're dealing with a child that has high expectations, but don't know the steps to get there. And we deal with parents that has this high expectation on the child to achieve what, sadly, 90% of the time the parent did not achieve.
That's right.
And that applies so much pressure not just on the child but on the coach as well. I get a lot of pressure from parents who tell me my kid needs to play the full match, and I physically can see that the child is not able to even last 40 minutes on the field. And the way I deal with that is that I make the parent understand that this is where your child is at. And I'm going to take everything good what that child has and implement that child into the team system. Because it's a team sport, Greg. So football's a team sport. It's not the individual.
Now, you also now are saying another thing. Almost everything you say is profound, but I'm catching the highlights of your profound statements. And that is that you mentioned that not every child is able to go for the full 40 minutes of competition. And again, we're sitting here in Ohio, northeastern Ohio, and right now the Cleveland Cavaliers are in the playoffs for the National Basketball Association Championship.
Yeah.
And the most recent game, some are saying the greatest basketball player of all times, LeBron James, said to his coach, "I'm playing all 48 minutes." Now, there has been few people that are as strong and conditioned and athletic as LeBron James in any sport. And he played every single minute and second of that game until about a minute left in the third quarter. And then he began to have his body react a little bit, and he had to sit out for a few minutes and actually go back into the locker room. If this man, who is, I would dare anybody to try to compete with him, if even he cannot do that, these are children that we are dealing with again.
Absolutely, and with football specifically, there is so much mental strength needed. There are a lot of rules that the kid needs to abide to, and I often let my coaches understand that these kids are depending on you completely. To understand that if they do something that is not in your game plan, they see you as a person they can come to and say, "Help me, show me the way."
Now, one of the things that many churches have done, I'd be interested in your perspective of this, is that they look at that human body, not a mini adult, but a child. And we know, at least in America, that an 8-year-old male child can either have an 11-year-old body physiologically or a 5-year-old body physiologically. So chronologically, their birthday says they're 8, but their body can have a 6-year span.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Then the 11-year-old body could have a 5-year-old psyche or emotion.
Normally the case.
And vice versa. The 5-year-old can be that 11-year-old in their psyche. And so often in our churches, we just, one size fits all, we homogenize it all. If you're 8, you compete against the 8-year-olds. And a lot of people are saying, no, remember, this is a child, not a mini adult. And physiological, where is that person physiologically on that scale?
Yeah.
And we can adjust maybe a league above or below where their chronological age is. Thoughts about that?
That's happening in South Africa, especially with the sport of football where there's a lot of contact. There is contact, there's physical contact in sports. And we've seen the repercussion of that where parents are forcing their kid to compete against a child twice the size. And they're not mentally even ready for, I always say kids under the age of 12 are normally not ready mentally for that physical competition.
And so we have to phase in these things. And some of the ways that we've seen it done in America are for a 5-year-old, the football field is shrunk,
Yeah,
both in length and width.
correct.
The balls are smaller, and the goals are even wider and bigger because we want them to feel some success.
Yeah,
And then as they physiologically mature, then we can lengthen the field. We can get the size of the ball to grow a little bit. And we try to match their physiological progression
yeah,
with the field and the equipment. Basketball, same thing. The courts are shortened. You often will put 2 baskets cross court, and then you'll lower the basket.
yeah,
So they don't have to throw the ball up there.
Mhm.
They can actually shoot the ball
yeah.
and toss the ball through.
In South Africa, I challenged our National Football Association with the small field.
Mm.
Because have another look at a small field. There's more pressure on those kids because the parents are closer. Everything happens faster.
Mm-hmm.
The expectation is higher because the time is short. And I said we should keep the small field, but demarcate it still the bigger field so that we can keep the parents
Mm-hmm.
outside of the arena and allow the child just to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
In South Africa, we now adopted a system where they don't keep results.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel about that?
I'm 100% behind that because I don't feel that competition should be part of a kid's growth in soccer, in football, at that young age.
And when is the age that you begin to phase that competition in?
We would normally phase it in at the age of about 11, 12
Okay.
years old because that is when the kid gets a better understanding of the game.
Mm-hmm.
A kid gets a better understanding of his body or her body, and also get a better understanding of the expectation of competing in the sport.
Mm-hmm. And this brings up the issue of what is the role of competition in youth sports, doesn't it?
Absolutely great.
And I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm glad that you are of that mindset. We compared in America to when our babies are born in the hospital, that when they come out, they're wrapped up, they're put in this incredible little car seat facing backwards in the middle of the rear seat. It's almost like an atomic bomb could go off and that child would survive.
It's safe.
And then within months, they're turned around and they're still in this thing that you could survive.
Yeah.
And then they're in a booster seat. And then when they get to a certain age or weight, height, whatever, they
Yeah.
can move up front and sit beside you. And then, horrors, you hand the keys to them at
Yeah.
some point and they start to drive. And we've often said that competition needs to be phased in like a child is phased into the automobile.
Absolutely.
And it's a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. But Bradley, there are people in the world that have a belief that competition is evil. Speak to that.
I can speak because let me share something with you. 10 years ago, when I made a commitment to play football more for God than for myself, and more not for the pleasure of man and money and fame, I made a commitment, Greg, that competition will no longer be a focal point in me playing football. I made a commitment that I need to be a good human being example to those watching me play and to those that even don't understand football. I play football, I'm still playing, not professionally, but I'm still playing socially. And the last 10 years when I made a commitment to play more for God and to represent God, hope, positivity, on this football field, I made a decision that I need to make sure that by the time I'm finished playing, somebody else wants to play the game. So what we coach in South Africa through football ministry is that our competition is ourselves. Our competition is our character. How do I deal with being 5 goals down in the first half? How do I deal with not starting the game? And we move our focus away from the result and the competition, but to our character. And 10 years ago, when I made this commitment to help myself, help my local church, help the community, I went around to various churches and I said, I want to use the gift that God has given me to make Him known. And to build friendships. Because I was tired of having enemies in the sport that I love because of the competition. And I think it was in South Africa, for example, it was the fact that 10 years ago, South African local churches, communities, saw sport, specifically football, as not healthy, and they used the term from the devil, is because we played it on a Sunday. We played for money, which they saw as gambling. We played football to a point where church leagues was more like a fighting war. And they said, well, we told you. But we had the wrong idea going onto the field. The person that coached us mentally coached us into life with the wrong understanding of football, and especially as a Christian.
Yeah, so we know that God created the entire world, including competition.
Absolutely.
And so it was created good. But what I hear you saying is that second part of that theological rubric, and that there was the fall, meaning that we sinned through
Absolutely.
Adam and Eve, and we have all sinned and gone a way that God does not want us to go, that it would include competition. Now, some people will say that competition and sport are the same. They're not.
They're not.
This is competition.
Yeah.
This is sport. This is business. This is politics. They're all competitions, but they have a unique manifestation of competition. So sport is one example of competition. And when we come to that, we know that because we have fallen and we have sin in our heart, in our minds, that we can then compete in sport in evil ways rather than trying to glorify God. We can then also worship God through how we compete.
Absolutely.
So it's not that competition was evil, but it's us that are evil and how we approach it. And what you gave up 10 years ago and what you started to do 10 years ago was saying, Lord, I'm going to do this for you in your way.
Yeah.
And it's not that competition's bad, but it's the way that I am competing.
Absolutely.
And again, going back to that car illustration with the kids, we want to help children a step at a time. In our leagues, in your leagues, in your local church, you want to help those kids understand it and not be afraid of it, but know how to integrate that faith in sport. All right, Bradley, we're going to come back for one more segment because I think we've still got some stuff to uncover. And it's just great to be with you again. Bradley Barnes is with us from South Africa. He's the CSRM director there, and we're talking about some things that are relevant to our local church sports rec and fitness ministries. So thanks for being with us, Bradley.
It's a pleasure.